We all experience fear throughout our life. Sometimes it can sneak up on you when you're not expecting it. Other times you can be so in fear of predicting an outcome that you're not sure of how that outcome is going to work out. But you go into the what ifs in a negative way instead of what ifs in a positive way. What if this fails versus what if this is the best thing for me? What if this is the best thing that's ever happened? But when it comes to a fear of change, it's a very challenging one, because if you're not ready to change or you have a fear of change, then you won't commit to the change that you want to make. And if you don't commit to the change you want to make, then you'll start going into lots of other spiraling fears, like the fear of failure, fear of success, many of the fears that we talk about in our 1 Year No Fear book. Today, we're going to dive into the fear of change. And if you are experiencing changes that are coming up and you feel very uneasy about them, or you feel anxious when you think about change, when you feel like everything is changing around you and you just wish it could go back to the way it was. If you've got any of these things that are bubbling up for you, let's dive into that today with the intention that by the end of this episode, you'll feel good about the changes that are coming your way. You'll feel excited about the future. And that if you've got anything that's bubbling away, well, let's work on that today. Today we're going to dive into the fear of change, because let's face it, change is inevitable. It's part of life. We're either growing or we're dying. It can be incredibly daunting, though, when you have changes that are coming up where you can't predict the outcome, or you feel a bit anxious because it's a change you've wanted for a long time. And then other fears start to sneak in, like, what if it's not as good as I hope it is? And we start going into some of those dramatic levels of doom where it comes to something you've maybe wanted for a long time. Or it could be something that has come up that is a great opportunity for you, but because of the fear of the unknown, maybe even a fear of failure, maybe even a fear of success. What if this goes so well? I can't keep up with this change. I can't keep up with the demand, or whatever it is that's on the other side of that success. It's very interesting when we dive into these fears. And for those of you that are just joining me and you've not heard me talk before, my husband and I did a survey back in 2016, which went out to over 60,000 entrepreneurs and small business owners to find out what is holding them back, what fears are getting in the way, where are their setbacks, where are their roadblocks between them and where it is that they want to be. And to our great surprise, over 41,000 of these people responded, and they told us everything about what's going on in their businesses. And I mean, if they didn't tell us everything, then the even just the surface stuff they told us was really impactful, and it helped us to understand how we could support more people like you by getting to understand those fears and getting to work through them. It's really interesting. As we published our first book, 1 Year No Fear, we had so many people that wrote into us, or they booked Zoom calls with us, and we got to talk to a lot of people. In fact, after we ran that survey, we personally worked with over 1,000 of those people who have been through our memberships, who have been through our challenges that we run at the end of every month, that they come to our live in-person events, they join our online events. We've worked with a lot of these people, more than 1,000 of them. And it's really interesting as we've gone through this process and as we've gone on this journey, how Greg and myself have also gone on our own 1 Year No Fear journey, where we are really putting this to the test. We practice what we preach, we walk our talk, and we don't tell other people to do things that we wouldn't do ourselves. So we've got a whole journey since we published this book. It was almost like God said, right, you've published this book, now I'm going to put you to the greatest test. So when it comes to the fear of change, I completely get it, how you could be feeling, how you might be feeling right now. And I just love this topic so much that I want us to really dive into this, because it can stir so many emotions, can't it? When you have a fear that starts coming up, especially if it's one that surprises you, you think, where did that come from? Or, oh my gosh, I thought I worked on that a long time ago. How is this now coming back up again? If you've ever felt that way, then you are human. Woohoo, well done. Here's your certificate. I'm giving you a virtual certificate right now for proving that you are a human being. But that is the point, right? You're a human being, not a human doing. And when we get into the doing of fear, we start doing things that represent fear and how it shows up in our lives. And it's just crazy how it shows up. It's crazy how all the stories we've heard and all the people that we've interviewed, how it shows up in their life. And it's very interesting when it comes to the fear of change, which is our topic today. I was working with a private client over in Barcelona last year, and she flew us out to work with her because she's built a huge business. I've been consulting with her since around 2007. I think it was 2007, 2008 when we first met. And we started consulting and helping her to build her brand. Well, since then, she's gone global. She has a global business. She's doing the most amazing thing. She just had an investor bought 70% of her business a few years ago. And so she said, right, you're my next step. Every time I've been ready to go to that next level of growth, I know that I've got to come see Sammy, right? But by that point, she'd moved to Barcelona. So she flew us out to Barcelona last year. And it was really interesting. I showed her the 12 fears and I said, right, tell me, out of all these 12 fears that we talk about in the 1 Year No Fear book, what is the fear, or what are the fears that are holding you back the most? And fear of change is the first one. Fear of success is fear 12 out of the 12 buckets of fear that we really narrowed it down. It was like there was this almost like a system, like a journey where no matter what fear people told us they had, when we asked them to unpack that fear, what was creating that fear or what they were most fearful of within that fear, it came down to one of these 12 buckets. And we started to realize there was a commonality in, when someone says they've got this fear, actually what's packing that is these 5 fears or these 4 fears or these 3 fears. So it's never usually one fear on its own. The fear that you call it, the label that you give it, usually has a number of fears packing underneath it. So we said to her, show us what fears are really getting to you. So she looks at fear number 1, which is the fear of change. And she says, oh, I haven't got a fear of change. I absolutely love change. And then she goes through, that one. And then she gets to the 12th one and she says, the fear of success. Oh my God, that gets me every time. And I said to her, wow, isn't it interesting? Because you've got a fear of success. And she went into a bit of the story, which I won't share today, but she went into a bit of the story of why she has this fear of success. And then I said to her, so you love change, but you've got a fear of success. Can you see how that fear of success is going to stop you from changing? It's going to stop you from loving change. And we looked back over some of the instances over all the years that she's been building her business. And we were able to very clearly see where that fear of success stopped her from changing and evolving in the business. It stopped the business from evolving because every time she reached a plateau, so did the business. And so it was really interesting to look at all of her journey and the points on her journey at which this fear of success caused her business to stop growing, to stop changing, to stop evolving, to stop transforming. So that fear of success was sabotaging her love of change every step of the way. Now, it's really interesting because, I believe we are where we're meant to be exactly at the time we're meant to be there. And if you have been meaning to do something, but you haven't done it, and then all of a sudden you get that boom, I'm going to do it because that's the right time to do it. I'm a firm believer in that. And I believe that she's exactly where she's meant to be. However, if we look back over that journey, if she hadn't have had that fear of success, if she'd have worked on it, as we are working through all these fears with you on this show and through the book, would she have got where she could have been faster? And actually, would that have been her destiny? Were all the angels just like doing everything they could to still get her there when she could have been back there? We will never know. We'll never know. But wouldn't that be interesting if that were the case? If this fear of change or whatever fear it is that you have going on for you. Of course, we're diving into the fear of change today, but if you've got a different fear, but it's packed by the fear of change, or there's something that you want to do, and the fear of change is actually got its claws in you, and it's stopping you from moving forward and getting that job that you've always wanted, or starting that business, or growing that business, or going after the kind of client that you'd love to work with, but you've been too scared to, because you don't, if I change my client base, will all of my clients that I've already got get offended and they'll all leave me because now I'm working with a different type of client? I mean, there could be any number of reasons why the fear of change has got its grip in you. But if it has got a grip on you, then it is going to limit your success. And maybe God, I'm gonna call God because that's the terminology that I use. Whatever terminology you use, or whatever your faith or belief is, I hope that I don't offend you by using the term God, but I am going to use the term God throughout this podcast and throughout this process, because God really has shown me personally a way to bust through my fears and to overcome any of these things that are coming up. It's not just strategy, it's also being really mindful of destiny. Your destiny is already pre-planned, in my opinion. Like, you're already on your way to where you're going. You already know you're going to be successful in what you're doing, but for whatever reason you are putting these roadblocks in the way. And it could be for any number of reasons. We're going to discuss them on the show. But just like my client in Barcelona, when we talk about the fear of change, on page 146 of the 1 Year No Fear book, you'll see me introduce another one of our clients who she said recently on a mastermind, I don't have a fear of change as such, but if I haven't done something before, I'm scared. Well, that's still a fear of change. And it's really interesting when you dive into this, because this client, she often shows up to the mastermind session. We run a global mastermind, just in case you didn't know, and we run 2 mastermind sessions every day for an hour. I've got an amazing team of mentors and business coaches, marketing coaches, branding coaches, storytelling coaches, publishing coaches, SEO coaches, website coaches, content writing coaches. I've got coaches that are just absolutely phenomenal, and they deliver these sessions alongside myself and Greg. It's really interesting because this person, whenever she comes onto the calls, it's always because she's won a client and she wants to now plan out meticulously, almost to the letter, exactly how she's going to deliver that session. And she uses the masterminds for us to plan these sessions with her. So she goes in, she uses the mastermind to come up with the pitch and what she's going to sell and how she's going to sell it. She goes in, she wins the client, and then she comes back to the mastermind and says, right, I've sold it. How am I going to deliver it? Because she has to have so much certainty with every step of the way. And that's fine, And eventually I can see that she's changing. I can see that as she's creating more certainty, and as we're building her pitches and the different programs that she's building, she's getting more certainty in herself. And because she's now delivering these into these corporate clients, because that's her particular audience, she's really building her confidence. And the more she builds her confidence, the more pitches she's going to, the more clients she's having conversations with, or potential clients. And she's now able to say, well, for this client, I did this. And what about this? She even had a client that she won who said they had a £1,500 budget to bring her in and do some resilience work with their staff. And she came to one of our sessions and she said, what am I going to do? They've said they've only got £1,500. I can't really do very much with £1,500. And I said, okay, so here's what we're going to do. £1,500, you're going to pitch to them what you can do within £1,500. You're then going to, and by the way, you're doing that because you're then responding to them and they can see that you've heard them. So that's going to be the lowest option. You're then going to do like a middle option, which will be around £5,000. And that's going to include the things that you can do within the 1,500 plus a whole bunch of other stuff. Then you're going to make another offer, which will be, say, £12,000. And she said, I can't go in and charge them that. They've told me they've only got £1,500. I said, bear with me, honestly. There's a lot of porky pies that go on when it comes to corporates telling you what they can spend and what they can find in their budget. So you're going to make a ridiculous £12,000 offer, and that's going to include all the things from level 1 and 2, but you're also going to maybe deliver some private coaching with these clients as well, and with their team leaders, and that's going to include X, Y, and Z, and that's going to be 12,000. And she said, I don't know that I could go and do that. Now, see here the fear showing up there in what she said. I don't know if I can go and pitch them that. Well, that's because it's change. She's not used to charging that much money to go and deliver that much value, because that's not the kind of people that she's been working with so far. But she's up leveling. She's changing. The type of clients that she's working with and wants to work with is changing. So there's fear there. Of course there is. Because it's new, it's exciting, and it's also unknown. So she's totally ready. She can totally do it. She's so much more capable than she gives herself credit. But that fear keeps showing up. So she goes in and she pitches these 3 options. She does the 1,500, about 5,000, I think was the middle one, and 12,000 was the highest one. I remember that being 12,000. And we've mapped the whole thing out. She goes in, she pitches it. She walks away with £12,000 worth of business, because they could see that she'd heard them and that she'd pitched them the thing that they said they could afford. But actually what they really wanted was something that they hadn't even considered. Now, when she positioned that and she shared with them how they can change, but how they can change and evolve their team in a way that creates some predictability, and she's built in some hand-holding with that, now they can see themselves in the change. Because they can see themselves in the change, and they can see themselves going through the transition, having someone hold their hand as they do that, now there's more security, there's more certainty in it. So now the client has let go of their fear of change. Now they're investing in it. So can you see how it can feel so uncomfortable when you're going when you're going for that next level of your up leveling? It can feel totally uncomfortable. But if that is your destiny and that's where you're meant to be going, and that you know that is in your future, then why hold back? Why put a load of fear and a load of shizzle in the way of, or between you and your destiny? Don't put anything in the way of your success. So we're really going to dive into this fear of change, because when you have a fear of change, it is going to limit you in absolutely everything that you do, because change is inevitable, as we already know. It is part of life. So how can we understand what the fear of change is, and how it might be showing up for you, and also what you can do about it if it is showing up for you? Because I want you to be in that same situation as our client who's coming back to the mastermind and saying, oh my gosh, they said yes, they've gone for the top one. Now what do I do? Well, the thing is, once you know the what, the how is really easy. If you know what it is that you're wanting to achieve, and you have complete and absolute clarity and certainty around that, it takes the fear of change away. So first, let's define what the fear of change really is at its core. I've made loads of notes for you today because I don't want to forget to tell anything as we go through today's show. So at its core, the fear of change is an emotional response to stepping out of what we call our comfort zone. We're going into the unknown. And when you're facing the unknown, and especially for those of you who, like me, are a bit of a control freak, my husband would probably say I'm very much a control freak, but I like to have a certain element of predictability. Like if I'm creating a campaign, I want to create a marketing campaign that I know will be successful. If I'm going to invest money in something, then I want a certain level of certainty in that. If I'm going to go and take a risk, or if I'm going to jump into something, then I want to have thought about some of those options before we do that. On the other hand, that's how I used to be. Since we launched 1 Year No Fear, And I have things that come up where we've got options and we've got possibilities, and people are approaching us and saying, hey, how do you fancy doing this? How do you fancy doing that? I'm really feeling into that now. Instead of going into my have to have complete certainty, got to look at all the options version of me, I'm just saying yes, and then saying, God, I know you're going to figure this out. I know you're going to figure this out. If this is something that we're meant to do, then you're going to give me a sign that this is what we're meant to do. And I'm opening myself up to way more possibilities. For example, in November 2023, both Greg and I had a revelation. We both had a download at the same time that we were meant to be in Texas. There was no reason for us to be in Texas. We'd never actually done any business in Texas. When we used to come to the States sometimes twice a month before lockdown, it was to run events all across the East Coast, and we started to develop into the West Coast, but Texas was never part of the plan. And so when we both got the revelation at the end of November, we kind of talked about it with each other and said, well, what do we do? And we said, well, we've got a friend out there. Let's contact her and see, what do you need to do to move to Texas? And is it the kind of move that we should be making? And without any fear whatsoever, reached out to my friend. She said, get on a plane, come out here. A couple of days later, I flew out. I gave out myself 3 weeks, and Greg said, look, take 3 weeks, really take your time, get to know the land, get your feet on the land, work out what's what. Again, have to have some certainty. And yet I got out here and everything just felt so right. Everything was so in flow that within 5 days, I'd signed the contract on this house where I'm talking to you right now for a contract lease for 1.5 years. So that was before we knew, were we going to be able to come out here? Were we going to be able to work from here? Were we going to be able to live here? I just had complete and utter faith that it was going to work. And I didn't even think about what the consequences were, or, well, what if this goes wrong, or what if that doesn't happen? We just went into it saying, I know we've got complete favor on this. God's showing complete favor. It's been too easy. It's been so easy. This is obviously right. It's obviously where we're meant to be. And within 3 weeks, we then packed everything up. We gave everything away, literally gave everything away. The only thing that we sold was our home. And then that took 4 months. We'd already moved here. We'd been out here nearly 4 months before our home actually sold. We really moved here in pure and utter faith. As soon as any fear came up, we said 1 year no fear, as if we were putting 1 year no fear up in the face of any fear that came up. So anytime we needed some certainty, we just said, well, hang on a minute, 1 year no fear, we've got complete faith, this is going to work. There wasn't a plan B. There was just all in. We went all in. And so this is really our way of testing 1 year no fear. And it's working all the way. We've been on such a journey. The last 6 months, we've been in Texas 6 months now. And we've been on such a journey of faith. We've put faith over fear. And I want you to remember, whenever fear does sneak up, especially the fear of change, it's inevitable. My success is inevitable. 1 year no fear. For the next year, I'm not going to feel any fear. I'm just going to go for it. And that's what we tell our members. And the amount of progress that they tell us they're making, because as soon as they feel that fear, they just say 1 year no fear. For the next year, for the next 12 months, I'm not going to feel fear. Well, guess what? That 12 months rolls over. And you could keep saying for the next 12 months. And then next week, you'll say for the next 12 months. And you just keep going through the 1 year no fear philosophy of, hey, what would I do if I didn't have any fear? Where would I be if I didn't have any fear? What would I be doing? Who would I be hanging out with? How would I be serving? What would I be doing to give back if I didn't have any fear? How would life look so different to the way that it looks right now? It's just so fascinating. It fascinates me when we ask these questions. So I want to also share another story when it comes to fear, because this particular one was around the fear of commitment, and we are going to dive into some fear of commitment, even though today is the fear of change, because once you've made the change or you've decided to change, well, you have to commit to it. So really, these two fears work hand in hand. When you go through the book, which you can order at oneyearnofearbook.com, you can go straight to Amazon and order it straight on Amazon by typing in 1 Year No Fear. But if you do that, then you'll miss out on all the bonuses. Greg and I created a little online program to go with this book. So the book is half of the program. The other half of the program is online. It's completely free. All you do is pay for the book. You get the rest of the program online for free. And all the proceeds from this book go to a brilliant charity called Shout, which is a mental health charity. A bit like the Samaritans, only it's all done by text, because sometimes people don't want to speak something out, because then that's like admitting that it is how it is. And this charity has saved thousands of lives already. And we really support mental health charities because we've been through it. Both Greg and I have had times in our life where we've had challenges and people were there for us. And so we want to be there for other people. So all the proceeds from the book go to the charity, and the online resource we've created to go with the book. We've done it because not everyone can afford to jump into a program like our Invincible Impact program, but we know that we can help people along the way. And so that's what we've done. So if you go to oneyearnofearbook.com, then you'll be able to access all the resources that go with the book as well. So one day we're having this mastermind, and one of our clients, one of our members, she says, I want to create a YouTube channel. And this was all new for her, right? So the fear of change wasn't there. She was like, I'm ready to go for it. So she'd overcome anything that she was fearful of in terms of actually creating the YouTube channel and being visible, being seen. So we're brainstorming what the name of the channel is going to be. And we come up with this great strategy. And then I say to her, what's the promise of your channel? She said, what do you mean? I said, well, the promise of your channel is, how often are you going to go live? What can they expect from you? What's your commitment going to be to your audience, to your followers? And it was like she froze, and I could see she was starting to change color. She was going red, and the more silent she was, the more red she was becoming. And I said, oh my gosh, what's going on? You're changing color. What's happening? And she said, I've just realized I don't want to commit to that. And I said, okay, what's that about? And then we start having this discussion about how, it's a private discussion, so I'm not going to share the whole discussion, but ultimately she'd had so much trauma around commitment in her life. She had so much evidence of when she commits to something, it doesn't work out, that she literally was changing color when she was thinking about having to commit to making 1 video a week or 2 videos a week. I said, when are you going to go live? Are you going to do something every Tuesday and Thursday, or what's your commitment going to be? Seriously, she was changing color at even the thought of it. And so when we got to the heart of that, and she was able to realize that there was some irrationality, there was some drama that was showing up there. And we started to look at, okay, well, what's the realistic chance of that happening with the channel? There wasn't any. There was no chance of that happening with her channel. And so once she had some certainty around that, she was able to then move forward. But wasn't it interesting how the fear of commitment was then also sabotaging the changes that she was about to make? I find this thing so fascinating. So if you, like her, are wanting to commit to something, whether that's a healthy eating plan or going to the gym or showing up live on YouTube, whatever it is, doing more Facebook Lives, it might be you've got something in your business or something in a relationship. You want to commit to something in a relationship, or you want to commit to a relationship. Oh, there was some really fascinating stuff that came up in the fear of commitment, which we go into in the book. We had lots of stories of people who were avoiding relationships because they felt like they could have a successful relationship or a successful business. I was one of those. I share my story in the book as well. But these fears, they're working together to sabotage you. And you add you on top of that if you're already a self-saboteur, and you've got a great mix of staying where you are, constantly feeling resentful that you're not further than you want to be, frustrated that you're not further ahead than you are, looking at other people, watching them achieve success in areas that you just look at them and say, I could do that. And yet you are not further ahead. So, I pray that as you listen to this show and other shows that we do, that you start to move forward and say 1 year, no fear to absolutely anything that shows up for you. When somebody offers you to do something and you feel that no bubbling up, sense into it. Is it fear causing the no, or is this an absolute no? Is this, like I got I received an offer today to fly out to India and do this, what sounds like an incredible retreat. And my immediate instinct was no. And they said, oh, how come, are you too busy? And I said, no, actually, I'm working on not being busy. I'm working on living in a state of peace as much as I can, that I don't need to be flying everywhere and doing everything. I'm not in that season of my life. I've been there, I've done that. That's not the season I'm in now. And I can say that with certainty, that that's coming from a place of peace. That's really coming from a place of peace, not being scared to go to India, or not wanting to go because I don't have the money, or I don't have XYZ. It's not coming from that place anymore. I used to come from that place. You've probably heard of it termed as FOMO, fear of missing out. I used to break out in FOMO with anything like that before. But that's not the place that I'm in right now. It's not the season I'm in, and I'm perfectly comfortable saying no. And just know that no is a complete sentence. You don't have to explain anything beyond that. But the key thing is that if you're going to say no, that you're saying it from that place of peace, a complete place of certainty and stability, rather than fear. So let's look at some of the symptoms of the fear of change. If you are experiencing any of these fears, then here are some common ways that it shows up. We go into this in a lot of depth in the book. If you've read the book, then you'll already be familiar with that. If you haven't read the book, then read the book for sure. So anxiety and stress are two symptoms that are very obvious when you think about change. Like with my client, if you feel yourself changing color, or you feel like a washing machine in your stomach, you might find yourself even procrastinating and pushing decisions away, decisions you know that you need to make, but you're not making them because you know that if you make it, then there's going to be change on the end of that. So it might be that you cling to familiar routines rather than saying yes because you're going to figure it out. You're going to figure out how. I remember when Greg and I first met, and I had 5 businesses at the time that I met him, and I had hardly any time. I was working 18 to 20 hours a day. I didn't have time for a relationship. I was going through the process of selling my company at that time. We're going back to 2013, end of 2013. There was so much going on at that time. It was just crazy to even think about getting into a relationship. And so we were friends for a good year and a half. There was just no way. Like, I was too busy. I was flying around the world. The business was just at a stage where we had like one foot in one life and one foot in the life that we were building. So it was a lot of change, a lot of everything up in the air, that I just didn't feel like I could commit to anything else outside of what I was already dealing with. And as we were starting to go through the process of selling the company and signing all the paperwork, and I was moving to France, and there was all kinds of stuff that was going on around that time, I needed some certainty. And I remember before we even were in a relationship, he flew out to, I think we were going to Calgary, and there was my business partner, myself, and Greg. We'd brought him on board as our CEO. He was acting CEO for a period of time. And in fact, that's how we met, because we brought him in more on a non-exec director position. So he was acting CEO because of the process of change, the cycle of change we were going through. And he flew out to Calgary. And I remember we all met up at Heathrow Airport, and my PA, she, like, literally my calendar, she was telling me, when I get to the airport, this is the restaurant that we're going to eat in, and then we've got to be at such and such place, and then we've got to be here, and then we've got to be there. And I remember Greg looking at it and just like wanting to tear this thing up, because he is so the opposite of somebody that has a fear of change. Greg thrives on change. He can't survive if things aren't changing. Like, he'll constantly change the living room around. He'll constantly change things in his office. He has to change things because that's who he is. It's like inbuilt into him. Well, at that time, that wasn't who I was. The thought of turning up at an airport, flying somewhere, and then working out where we were going to stay when we got there, that was a thrill for him. For me, that was bringing me up in hives, right? Well, I have learned his ways over the years, and because he had so much faith and so much trust that there would always be somewhere that we'd find to stay, I got to experience that and have so much evidence. And because I had so much evidence of what happens when it goes right, what happens when you just surrender and you work it out along the way, you say yes and then figure out how. I had so much evidence of that I started to become like that as well. So I wanted to share that with you, because if your models of success around change have not been positive, then it's going to keep you where you are. Another client that I was working with about 6 months ago, I did some private consultancy work with her and coaching. She, every time I spoke to her, every time we had a conversation, we'd work out exactly what she was going to go away and do. Like, she'd be working on a program. We'd decide who the audience was. We'd map out the whole program. She knew exactly what she had to go away and record, what she had to write. We even started coming up with some of those things on the sessions. She'd then go away. The next session, I'd be expecting her to come and say, right, I've done this, 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 and this. Now what? And she'd turn up to the session and say, yeah, I was thinking about that. I didn't do anything in the end, because actually what I'd like to do and what I thought about doing is this. Right, okay, let's plan that out then. So then we'd plan that out, and then the next time I'd see her, it'd be the same thing. Every single time I saw her, she'd changed it. She never did anything that we agreed to. In the end, I said to her, I'm not going to take your money anymore. I'm not going to coach you anymore, because we're not getting anywhere. There's something that's happening for you that is stopping you from committing. And every time we get to a point where you've committed to something, you then totally divert, and you do it after the session. So I've got no control or any way of being able to input into that. You've made your decision. You go off on a totally different direction, and then I'm solving problems instead of helping you to create the business and the life that you want. And that's not who I am. I'm not comfortable keep charging you for sessions if that's how you want to do it. You know, another coach is definitely for you. And she said, no, you're right, I'm not committing. And I said, all right, well, what is this about? We've got to get to the bottom of this, because whoever you work with and whoever coaches you, they're going to have the same problem. So what is it that we need to dive into? Anyway, I won't go into the specifics of it, but what we realized, I said, when was the first time that you remember in your life, go back to the very first time you remember having a fear of commitment? You were scared of committing to something. And she went back to when she was 3 years old, when her dad had built this really successful business, and he'd built the business, and just at the point that he was at the pinnacle of success, he got scared. He had a fear of success and a fear of commitment, and he changed everything. They ended up moving to a totally different part of the world. I can't remember. I think they moved to a different country, and he started all over again. And she said, I remember that's the first time I was aware of the fact that he'd done that before, and that we were changing again. And so they then go and they make this change. They go to this different country. He starts building up this business again there. It becomes successful. At the pinnacle of his success, he's just about to grow, or something's happening in the business, and then they move again. So she spent her whole life moving, because as soon as something would become successful, they would have to move. So her fear had become stacked trauma, that the very thought of committing to something meant well, what's the point? Because when I create this and it's successful, I'm just going to have to change again. And so once we got to the bottom of that, there was this fear of change and fear of commitment that were holding her back. It had such a grip on her that she was even getting to the point of she knew exactly what she needed to do, but then she'd change before she'd even start. So unlike her father, who would actually start it and get it to a point of success and would be changing lives and making a difference to people, at least on the way, she wasn't even getting to that. She was so in fear of this change that she was just stopping completely. So maybe you see yourself in some of those examples. And if you do, then you might find yourself, like her, procrastinating and avoiding even starting something in the first place. Now, these things also tend to create physical symptoms. And some of those physical symptoms, I know I felt them myself. Maybe you'll resonate with some of these. Things like headaches. Oh, this is giving me a headache, trying to get through this. And so headaches were showing up certainly for her. And I find that people that have a fear of change, they do tend to mention that they get headaches quite a bit. Stomach issues, things like acid reflux. I just can't stomach it. I can't stomach the change. And the anxiety and the stress will cause things like acid reflux and stomach issues, sleep disturbances, all of these things just underlying that stress and anxiety. And if signs like clinging to routine, clinging to your comfort zone, avoiding situations where you are required to step outside of your normal activities, negative self-talk, self-doubt, that's a big symptom where it comes to the fear of change, especially the inner critic. And also, telling yourself that you can't handle it or you won't be able to handle it. Looking at other people and wishing you had that, but then feeling the immediate anxiety of, if you had to do that, that's how you would feel. So overwhelming feelings of insecurity when you're measuring yourself against other people, and definite feelings of uncertainty that even the smallest change can feel insurmountable. Now, you might be listening to this thinking, I don't have any of that. And in which case, absolutely brilliant. Keep listening to the shows because there might be something that sneaks out. And I would encourage you to go through the questionnaires that Greg and I have put into each of the fears. So the first half of the book really is diving into case studies and stories. Some of the stories that I've shared with you today are not in the book. There are lots of stories actually that I'll be sharing that just pop up and that I remember to share with you that are not in the book, because these have happened in the last year since after we published the book. But if you go to the book and you go through each of the 12 fears and you do the survey the questionnaire that we've put with each of them, there are 10 questions. And what we tend to find is when people score themselves out of 5 as you go through it, you might find that when you go through the fear of change questionnaire, that it's a 0 out of 5, 1 out of 5, 0 out of 5, 1 out of 5, 0 out of 5, 5 out of 5. 0 out of 5. And it's those ones where you get the high 3, 4, and 5. They're the ones to look at, because you might feel like you don't have a fear of change, but when you go through it and you score yourself, sometimes there's a real sneaky little thing that gets in there. And then when you look at how has that shown up in my life, you can see that actually that has been sabotaging you at certain times of your life and your career, your relationships, your health, your fill in the gap, whatever it is that you're working on that you feel stuck in. You might well find that that's lurking. I love the saying, feel the fear and do it anyway. I think it was Susan Jeffers that said that and coined that phrase. She created a book and a whole program system around it. But for me, I like to refer to scripture. And so I've got a scripture for you. Whether you believe in scripture or you believe in the Bible, I'm not a fan of religion, by the way. I'll put that out there straight away. But I do aim and intend to walk like Jesus, to support and heal and help as many people as I can. And just like Jesus, he fought against religion. I'm not fighting against religion, but what I am doing is if anything, if I'm fighting for anything, I'm fighting for you going out there and living the life and building the business, if building a business is what you're doing, or having the family, having the things in life that you want, free of fear. That's totally my intention and Greg's intention with this show and everything that we do. So whether you follow scripture or not, maybe the scripture will bring some healing to you. In Isaiah 41:10, the Bible offers comforting words. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. This, for me, it reminds me that we're not alone when we're facing those fears. Whatever's coming up for you, you're not alone as you go through it. And we're also here to pack your parachute. You don't have to go through this alone. So here's how to overcome the fear of change by focusing on service. Because I believe that when we are focusing on ourselves, what we're doing and what we sound like and the what ifs, when we go into the what ifs, usually it's because we're catastrophizing something that we see in our future or now that we're very personally involved in, like it's personal to us. Whereas whenever I feel that and I say, well, hang on a minute, I'm feeling this way, I'm going to turn that around. I'm going to focus on service. How can I be a bigger support to other people? How can you change your life as a result of something that I've learned or something that I know or something that I've been through? How can you change your direction as a result of a story I can maybe share? And the minute that I go into you rather than me, that fear just dissipates. It goes away. So I would suggest that make service a bigger part of what you do. And it might be that you are all about service. And so if you are, then I'm going to encourage you that whenever you feel fear, put it straight back into service. Go, 1 year no fear. How can you change your life? Or how can you change your health? How can you change your happiness? How can you change your relationship? How can you change your fill in the gap with whatever your expertise and skills are? And start pouring it into service of others. Because the minute you do that, you really are walking God's path. God wants you to spread love on the planet. He wants you to be a peacemaker, a way maker, a change maker, a ripple maker. That's what he wants of us, ultimately. And so the more you focus on service, the more he shines down and he says, brilliant. Well done, you. And he's clapping from heavens and he's cheering you on because you've taken the spotlight off yourself and you're putting that spotlight on others. I tend to find that any fear I have goes away straight away. So what I would encourage you to do is really think about who you can serve. One of the things that we do at our accelerator masterminds, which we've now launched globally. So we've got coaches that we're partnering with that have amazing skills in coaching that we don't want to be going into their local area and supporting their clients, but they do. And so we're partnering with coaches to launch these accelerator masterminds all over the UK and all over the States. And so one of the things that we've built into that is the service of others. So we have a session on what do you need? How can we help you? So we brainstorm something that you're going through in your business or an idea that you have or something that you want support with. So that's you're receiving. And then we go into another section, which is all about, again, you receiving. Who can we connect you with? Who are you looking to speak to? Who are your dream clients? What do you want us to say when we're in front of one of those people? How can we introduce you? So again, it's about you receiving. But then the final session is about you giving and being of service to others and being of service to your community in a way that gives back, that grows others, that gives them the opportunity to talk and to not be in isolation and not be lonely, going through life or through business on their own. And we've seen the most amazing causes start as a result of these sessions that we run at the end of the accelerator sessions. And so I'd encourage you to really think about, who can you serve? Who can you benefit? Who can you minister to? Though you might not be in a church or part of a charity, you might not be part of any kind of organization like that, but you might have a heart to serve others. You might want to support people. So I'd encourage you, just sit down for 5 minutes at the end of this show and make a list of potential groups or people that you could help. It could be a local charity. It might be a community project. It might be somebody in your personal network. It might be, a family that you can support. There's all kinds of ways that you can dig in and support. We had a friend, she's actually one of our members, who was going through a really tough time about 18 months ago. She was going through a really tough time. She'd exited a very abusive, traumatic relationship with all of their kids. They, I think, got 5 kids between them. And so she exits that relationship. There was all kinds of stuff going on. And Greg and I said, oh my God, like Christmas is only 5 days away. She literally left, everything went crazy just a few days before Christmas. And Greg and I, we just dug in and we went and got Christmas presents for all the kids. And we, made a big deal of doing something that got the whole family together. And she was her sisters at that time. We went over, and it was, just absolutely phenomenal to see the kids enjoy Christmas. And just for that hour or two that we were with them, all the troubles, all of the stuff they were going through could melt away even just for a little bit. And actually this whole family now come to our events when we run our live in-person events in Birmingham. That whole family comes and together they're on an entrepreneurial journey now. They're looking at what can they grow, what can they do when they grow up, what can they be, and they're surrounding themselves with really positive can-do influences that are going out and being of service. And it's just so wonderful to watch those kids grow and break through barriers and come through so much more than they've already come through as kids, going through the trauma that they have. It's just nice to be able to be a part of something and be able to give back and pour into our next generation. So is there a family you can support? Is there something you can do that is literally under your nose, that's on your doorstep, that you can get involved in? Even if it's taking a box of chocolates to the local care home and saying to all the nurses at that care home, I couldn't do what you do, but thank God that you do. Thank you for all that you do. There's not many people are going to be doing that. When I've gone in and done that in nursing homes and care homes, I've done that, and they're just like, oh my gosh, wow, and that has changed the course of their day. And if that changes the course of their day, that's going to change how they show up for the clients, for the people that they're caring for. It might even show up when they go home and they say, hey, guess what happened today? And just that act of kindness reminds them that there are still kind people in the world. So whatever fear you've got going on for you, transmute that into giving, transmute it into service of others. And really think about, how can you serve? So, who can you serve? But then how can you serve them? Think of some practical ways that you can use your unique God-given gifts and talents to be able to help others outside of your business or your career. And think of some actionable steps. What can you do? Well, you can go and buy the chocolates. You can then drive to whichever care home it is that you've chosen. There's always something that you can do. Always something you can do. So think about creating yourself a little plan, because again, that gives you certainty. It gives you something that you can walk towards and move towards with actionable steps that mean that you can tick that off your list and you can say, wow, I felt fear and I turned that into giving. Every time I feel fear, I turn that into giving. And you can look back on all the times that you've given to others as a result of that fear and all the good that came out of that. Eventually, you won't feel that fear anymore. You'll just go straight to giving. And one of the biggest things that I want you to consider today is to focus on why you want to do that. Why do you want to serve? Because your why is what's going to drive that. You can go and buy the chocolates. You can put fuel in your car. You can get the keys in your hand. You can go and open the door and get into the car. You can strap your seatbelt on. You can even turn the engine on. But if you don't put your foot on the accelerator and drive to the destination, then nothing has changed, has it? So we can do all of those things, just like my client who we planned everything out. She had a full strategy. There was nothing she needed to think about other than going and actually creating the program. I was going to give her the next steps after that, the technology and how to take money for it and all those things. She didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. All she had to do was create it. So there was something to sell. And yet, even though we got as far as we did, she was the one that had to do that bit. When you get as far as recognizing, a fear has come up, if you don't put feet to that faith, okay, I have faith that I can overcome this. I've got faith that I can do this. I've got faith that I can serve others. All right, and I've already made a little plan. I know exactly what I can do, so I haven't got to think about it when I'm actually in fear. If you don't put feet to that, if you don't put your foot on the accelerator and you don't drive forward, then nobody wins. You stay paralyzed and in a state of complete sabotage. Those other people don't benefit. And ultimately, that fear gets to provide you with more evidence of why it needs to stay there. So as we close today, I want to remind you that it's not about removing fear. We don't need to remove fear. What we need to do is make something bigger than the fear so that the service becomes bigger than the fear. Love becomes bigger than fear. Confidence becomes bigger than fear. Certainty of where you're going becomes bigger than fear. And when you have a good reason why, a solid reason why you need to be doing that instead of being fearful, then fear just doesn't have a place. It kind of looks and says, oh, I don't belong to that party, and it just goes away. So you don't have to try and get rid of fear. It will automatically remove itself when you start taking those steps forward, and it all starts with that first step. So however you're feeling, hopefully by now you're thinking, oh, okay, so actually, yeah, I've got some steps I can take. I can be serving instead of being in fear. Every time I feel fear, I can throw myself into seeds of service. I can do something good. I can transmute that fear, which then means that the more fear you have, it doesn't make you a failure because you have fear. What it does is it means that you're just overprotective in that area of fear. So we can remove that overprotection, because when you remove that, it creates a vacuum. It creates a space that can be filled with love. So my prayers for you today, my friend, are that you move forward fearlessly, courageously, and lovingly. Move forward gracefully, graciously, and intentionally. Be creative in the way that you move through the fear, and you'll find that you start to move through fear in a way that you maybe haven't before. So until next time, have a wonderful day, stay blessed, and remember, you are wonderfully and fearfully made. I'll see you next time.